Hello, this is Catherine Doverly, the Answer Lady. I have some patterns that use a bind off for the double knitting board that is not in most manuals. I call it chaining through the existing stitches, and while it is similar to the bind off we normally use, there is quite a difference. It has come to my attention that some people would like a little bit more explanation, so this video is to show you how it works. The sample garment is my spring shrug, which is available on my website and at vivaloom.com, and it uses this bind off. The reason is the edges of this design need to stretch to make the design work, and our regular bind offs don't do it. So here is how we manage it. Let's look at binding off some double knitting. I've finished my project, and normally when we bind off we would attempt to get an edge that looks like this one. It's achieved by chaining one stitch through one stitch, which I did here with the cast on. The advantage is it's nice and neat and even, and it doesn't distort the fabric. It stays about the same width as the knitting. Sometimes, however, we want to be able to widen the lower edge, and we need more stretch in it. So instead of doing this, picking up this stitch, chaining this one through it, and chaining the next one through it, let me undo that so I can show you what we will do instead. You have to start this where the working yarn is still attached. I pick up the first stitch and pull a loop of yarn through it. Now decide whether to keep your working yarn towards you or away from you as you work, because it will affect the look of the edge a little bit, and what you want is consistency. Pick up the next stitch, pull a loop through. Pick up the next stitch and pull a loop through. I call this binding off by chain stitching. Oops, and I picked up the wrong stitch. Got to alternate back and forth across the boards. And I did not keep the yarn to my side. Let me fix that. It's hard to talk and think at the same time. Maybe not for you, but it is a little for me. I'm ready to continue. Pick up a stitch and chain through it. You've got quite a lot of control over how stretchy and how loose the edge actually is because of the size that you make your loops. I believe I'm far enough that you can compare now this end with, let's pull it up through, this end, and you can see that I'm getting a much looser edge already, but I can make it looser still if I wish to. One way to do it is by elongating the loop. This is a normal size loop. I could make it longer. Let me do maybe 4 stitches like that. What did I do? Did you spot it? I didn't keep the yarn towards me, which is the way I'm doing it. Elongated loop. So for a brief period in this bind off, there are 2 stitches on the crochet hook. Right now, the loop I just made and the new stitch I'm picking up. Then I'll yarn over and pull through, and now there's only 1 again. Well, I'm having trouble finding this one. Here we go. Okay, these are elongated loops. Let's compare. You can see how my bind off was generous, and now it's even more so. There's one more way that this can be done, and that's using an extra stitch in between. So let me make a small chain stitch with just the working yarn. Now pick up a loop. Now pull a normal size loop through. Make another small chain stitch. Pick up my loop, pull a normal size loop through, small chain stitch. Pick up, pull a loop through, small chain stitch. I'm going to keep on going like this while I tell you why you might need to do it. Normally, we want the knitting and the bind-off to be about the same width. For example, a scarf, that's a great idea, and it is for an Afghan, a baby blanket. However, occasionally, as for a hat brim, a collar, the bottom edge of a jacket at the hip area, you may want it to be able to flare, which it certainly will not do if you just chain the existing stitches through each other. Well, I'm off. I'm going to finish this up off. So we need to build in a little extra stretch. And these methods of binding off with a separate yarn, well, it's really the same yarn, but you're adding yarn by creating chain stitches with new yarn rather than creating the chain stitches through the existing yarn. These all add some width. You can see how the fabric is just naturally relaxing, and if this were a collar that you wanted to fold to the outside, it would do so nicely. You can see that each method has a distinct look. We began and ended with the same method. The super-sized loops and the chain stitches between create different looks, and the one with the chain stitch creates these little lace holes that you could actually weave a ribbon through or a cord if you wanted to do that for a finishing touch. Naturally, you will get more comfortable with this bind-off as you work with it. Same is true of every technique. So I would really suggest that you knit some swatches and practice binding off before you knit the spring shrug and bind off with it. But I do think you would like to knit the spring shrug. It's a really cute, fun little jacket and much easier to make than it looks. Happy knitting, and bye now.